Hello, welcome to the November 1st, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test, make sure everything is coming through as expected, and then we will go ahead and begin. Bear with me just for a moment. Hello, welcome. Okay, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. My name is Greg Undo. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, primarily focusing on Steinberg products. I'm the host for the live stream. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you are watching this live, make sure that you please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply ask your question in the live chat field. When asking questions, realize that if you don't see an immediate response to your question, that I'll go through chronologically and go through all of the questions asked, but it's sometimes I may be 20 to 30 minutes behind the live questions to when it gets addressed. So if you could be patient and not ask the same question repeatedly, if you don't get an immediate response, that just kind of speeds everything up. That'd be appreciated. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro that you're using, which version, numbers such as 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system, that information is helpful. If you want to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website that you could search over 21,000 topics. And we also want to thank Agent K and Jazz Dude for all of their work as they serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this to make it a better community. And we also want to give special thanks to Jazz Dude for all of his efforts with the Cubase Nation Discord. So it's a wonderful resource of information for Steinberg users. So with that, I know we may have some people coming in. I think in some countries they've kind of done daylight savings time already. In the United States, we're going to be doing it next week, so it may be an hour different. So just to kind of be aware of that. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So we see Born to Sing on. We see Peter from Montreal. We have Robbie Bowling checking in from Dallas. We see Jazz Dude as well. All right, we have Benny from Sweden. He's home and a little sick. We hope you're feeling better. All right, we see Jan from CubaseIndex.com on. All right, so we see Bob Demers, and he just says, hey, everyone, first time here, learning again after 10 years away. The new software is so intuitive, it's like starting over. That's great, and welcome back to Steinberg, and feel free to ask any questions that you have. All right, we also have, all right, so we see, we have Stefan from Sweden checking in as well. All right, and we have Demetrius from Greece. Thanks for joining us. Okay. All right, and we have Jay checking in from Ireland in Wexford County. We see Grant Nicholas from Baltimore. Great to have you on, Grant. All right, so we have Emmanuel Morin. Just saying hello from Quebec in Canada. My mom was just there on vacation last week. Okay, so we just see a question. It says from Samog Engineer. Says, I have a question in the insert about the URT, and URT4 is designed for analog gear like compressors or EQ. I think maybe to give a look about those interfaces. So with those interfaces, you can use, available inputs and outputs to interface with outboard gear. So if you wanted to go to your audio connections. And if you have like an external compressor, we could come over and just add, a particular, so let's say we have a distressor and we wanted to connect this into inputs and outputs of our particular audio interface, that we could do that. And if we wanted to access that particular plugin, so what we want to do is connect it to available ins and outs on your audio interface. We'll go to the inserts here and we'll see under external plugins. Then you could just do the routing, and once you do that, you could measure the delay of the signal path, and that will compensate for the latency and automatically adjust. Now with the RT interfaces, what makes them unique is that they have a Rupert Neve design transformer. So when you actually are in the gain stage, like for the mic preamp and when you're doing the conversion, you could actually have a Rupert Neve transformer that's part of the signal path in hardware. So that's what makes the kind of the RT UR-RT interfaces unique, is the addition of the actual Rupert Neve designed transformer, but otherwise, but there's no special things with the RT versus the other Rs from the other UR interfaces for external processing integration. So anything that has ins and outs that could be connected, you can use in the same way. All right, so you see from I think Cubase indexes EU has changed from daylight saving times last weekend. So yeah, so we may have people joining an hour late, wondering why it's going on. Okay, so we have Steve Woznicki just says, I have a question about vamping when you get a chance. So I guess, is that maybe with comping? So it could be different terminologies for this, but let's say if I wanted to do comping, so if you have your particular question, let me just see if it was asked a little bit later. All right, so I'll go ahead and show some comping. All right, so let's say if I have like a number of projects recorded, like a number of files recorded, and at this point, when I go to audio, we could open up lanes, and we could say that each of these lanes is a different take. And then when utilizing the lanes, what we could do is just click on it with what we call the comp tool, which looks like a hand. So we can make these particular lanes, these particular takes happy. And instead of having, if I wanted to take like different portions from different takes, I could just grab the comp tool and select different regions like so. And if I wanted to audition these, I could hold down like the control or command key and audition. So say, okay, I like this take better. So at this point, we could just select different takes. And as we do this, as we select different performances, they will show up in kind of the main area. And then if I wanted to close the lanes, we could just click directly here. But let me know if that's what you mean by vamping, or vamping is more like kind of an extended improvisation. So let me know, Steve. All right, so we have from Demetrius, can we create a logical command to set event snap point to the loudest point for sound design for film and TV? All right, so let me just do new project here. So I don't think it's possible in a logical editor, but there may be a way. We'll see. So say we have kind of more of an atmospheric thing. And this might be something that Wavelab is kind of better at, but let's see if we can. So I'll select the event. Guess if we maybe came to hit points and let's set our threshold super high. So as you adjust kind of the threshold, we can see that we have the loudest, that's where the playhead position is. But let's see, I think if we go to Wavelab, so that could point it out to you, but let's say, let's take this file and edit it in Wavelab. Let's just see if we can. Take a look, see if there's. I seem to remember something years ago in Wavelab that would. I'll do a quick analysis. And see if there's. Okay, so I think if we click here, that this could show us. Okay, so say we'll create markers at the hit point so we could see kind of the loudest. So once again, if you go into Wavelab and do a global analysis, I know Wavelab is a separate program, but if you have Wavelab, go to loudness, analyze, And then where you see kind of the maximum value here, and that you could just say create markers. And let's say, okay, I want to do it on the left channel. So we'll just say create markers, and then we could see the loudest point directly there with the markers. So not in Cubase, but in using Wavelab with it, it's kind of a great function for that. So sorry about that. All right, so we see from Born to Sing, and then my chat field says, I'm getting a sound while clicking on note in Cubase 5, but I'm unable to get any sound in Cubase Pro 10.5 using i5. And doing the same thing, can you please help me by sharing the fix? Okay, so let's go back to a different project. All right, so I'll activate this project. And let's say if we want to hear the note as we click on it, so there's probably going to be this little icon here for acoustic feedback. So if that is turned off, you won't hear the notes as they're clicked on. But with this icon enabled, it looks like a speaker in the editor. Now as you click, you can hear the notes. So just simply make sure that your acoustic feedback is enabled. All right, so we see just a question from Sebastian, maybe this is to others. Does anyone have a problem with smooth operation in Cubase 12 after updating NI Complete 14? So maybe others that are, I don't have 14 complete. I think I have 13 on my studio system. But maybe other people could. Okay, so you just see, so more of a clarification from Steve was Nikki. Says I work on Broadway music and need to vamp measures sometimes several times within a song. Is there a way to do that and be able to jump out of it when need be? All right, so let's say if I needed to just kind of create a vamp area, we could activate like cycle markers. So let's say if I'm here, so I'm going to add a marker track. Okay, and we'll just say this is going to be our vamp area. So I'll just say, okay, we want to do this much, and I wanted this to vamp. So I'm going to add a cycle marker. If I come here, so I'm just going to hit the letter P, select it with the range tool, and let's say I needed to vamp these measures here. So I'm going to, again, just add cycle marker. So at this point, you could probably just create a macro. So let's say I want to create a macro just to play this cycle marker. And let's see if I just hit Alt P, if we have this selected. So if I just hit Alt P, so imagine it's a cleaner. All right, so say I'm gonna take it out of my cycle. So I'm just gonna hit the like slash key in a numeric keypad, turn that on. And then if I hit my like left and right arrow, so now it's gonna go to the next one. Then I could hit my left and right arrow to select the next cycle marker. And at this point, if I hit Alt P again, but let's say if I was So it's like I'm cycling this, and I'll cycle this one more time, and then we'll let it play to the next marker. So we'll cycle it. So now I'm going to turn off the cycle. Now I'm going, once I have this cycle marker selected, I can hit the next cycle marker and then hit the letter P again. And then it will continue, and I could activate by hitting the slash key on my numeric keypad, or you could assign it to activate the cycle. So say we're going to vamp this a couple times. We'll let it vamp one more time and say this is the last time it's going to do that. So what I'm going to do now is just to take it off the cycle, and now it will continue to play on. So if you have the cycle markers defined in the areas, you could just have that track selected and hit the left, right. And at that point, just activate. You could hit the letter P and then just hit the slash key. And you could set that up to turn it on and off. And you could change those keyboard shortcuts or remap them from a MIDI controller, like a MIDI foot switch. So you could do stuff like that. So let me know if that's helpful, Steve. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams on the live stream. All right, glad that Nick can make it early and on time. So, all right, so we have Luke checking in from Belgium. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Peter, how to keep channel width from mirroring across all projects globally. I hope that I'm explaining myself correctly. Preference, perhaps. So if you mean kind of, I'm not sure, Peter, if you mean in the mixer. So let's say if I come here, I believe that these will be saved. So if I open up a different project, let's say if I open this project and activate it, that those mix console settings, let's see if they're going to be the same. So I'll make this one, these channels super wide. And let me go back to this where we had narrow, and I'll activate this. So it seems like, so if it's the channel width here, that's going to be like per project. So let's say if I come and we jump back here, we'll look at the mixer, activate this. This I think will be wider when we do that. And I think it's going to be the same for the height here. So let me know, and if it's going to be like how many measures we're seeing in the project. Let's see if, so we can see that this is measure 2, beat 3, beat 4. So we're kind of looking at maybe maybe one measure here. And let's look at the timeline and see if we go back to this one, that we can see more measures, and those are going to be stored independently per project. So maybe, Peter, if you could let me know what width it is, whether it's to keep the channel width. So not sure if it's maybe stereo mono or quad or 5.1 or just the physical width in the mixer. So, or if it's the width of the project. And could be if you're starting with from a particular template, that everything may be similar if you're starting the projects with a template. So, but let me know if I misunderstood, Peter. All right, you see Michael Teams is on board giving out virtual ice cream already. That's great. Thank you, Michael. All right, so Michael Teams asks, howdy, Greg. Please show how to start a new project. I had a hard time last night trying to name the project. Dinosaur brain here. Okay, so just like a lot of programs, when we go to start a new project, I'll come here. It's going to prompt us by default since version 11 for the project location. So we're going to say create, and we'll call this, I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll call it November 1st, 2022. All right, so right now we have a folder that's been created. So at this point, we'll see our project file is untitled. So at this point, what we can do is just go to File, Save As, and I'll just call this Michael Teams. And now every time that I, will add different elements, the Michael Teams project will be stored within the particular folder. So the project isn't going to be recalled, isn't going to be saved until you actually save the project manually, because you may want to give it a different name than the folder it's in. So just try that, Michael. So just try to go to the very first time, if you hit save, it will prompt you for a name. Otherwise, we can see that this is our Michael Teams project. So let me know if that helps. All right, so we see from Demetrius says, for a single gunshot type of event in order to sync it to a specific frame. All right, so let's see if I'll just pull up a quick sound effect. So I think this is with kind of the meters. So let's say. Okay, so let's say I have this particular sound effect. So I don't know a way to automatically place the sync point, but if you wanted to just, within the editor, it's pretty easy to, depending on what you have selected here. So if you go to where you could show the clips in events, so we will have a sync point. So I could move that anywhere. So if I wanted that particular event to snap, so say I enable snap, at that point we could snap the loudest point. But I don't know a way to, let's see if we do just a quick statistics on it maybe. Yeah, so I don't know of a way to actually point it to a particular, where the loudest point is. So you might have to visually eyeball it, but you could do it inside a Wavelab. Let me just see if there's... Yeah, so I don't know of a way of doing that other than kind of manually, but I think it's pretty easy to do. See, Nick is just saying Greg's teasing me with Wavelab. So yeah, I'm just waiting to get one more request in. So hopefully we should get all the raffles prizes from the 250th. So I'm just waiting for Steve Davis to respond to an email so I get them all at once. So let me see that for Michael Teams as well. All right, my chat field just jumped, but I think I'm. All right, great to see John Costigan on the live stream. All right, we see Mark Winslow checking in from Hawaii. Thanks for joining us. And we see Gerald Ely on as well from Martinez, California. All right, so we just see David Kovac is, what is he showing right now? Alt P and whatnot. So yeah, if you wanted to just kind of select different events, you could hit Alt P, you could just cycle and play the particular event. So even if that is a cycle marker or just an audio event. So it's a good keyboard shortcut to know. All right. So we see, hi there, Paul from Munich, Germany. Are there any news on Apple Silicon support for the CC121? So I believe, usually I try really hard not to give any information in advance, but I believe it'll be released tomorrow. So look for that release tomorrow for the Apple Silicon support for the CC121. So it was kind of released internally today. So I believe it's supposed to be released tomorrow. So Paul, look on the download page tomorrow for CC121, and that will have the M1 Apple Silicon support. All right, so we have a question from Jan, CubaseIndex.com. Can an insert or Cubase command causes the original audio wave to be modified or deleted? Does Cubase save the original file? And so how do I restore the file, say, 1 year later? Thanks, Jan. Okay, I'm just going to adjust my quick adjustment on my mic. Hang on just 1 second. All right. So if we have, let's say, a particular audio file that we wanted to do like processing on. All right, so let's say I want to take that, we'll drag it to our project. And let's say at this point I wanted to do particular processing on this. So I'll go to audio. And if we have this as set up for inserts, we could just come over. Let's say we select a track. If we have inserts here, so let's say, okay, I want to add a delay on it, and let's do a flanger. So, all right, so now when we play it back, and I'll adjust the delay here. So now when we listen to this particular file, and we have these plugins on, and I'll just mute the other one here. All right, and all right, so all right, so if we have a number of different effects on a particular file, and we want it to go, and let's say we go to F7 for the offline processing. One of the cool things is that we could just drag these particular effects. So let's say if I come here to mix console, I will say let's get to the inserts, and if I wanted to just drag these to the list, we can just, okay, so I'm going to select an event here, and then we drag these to the list. So we have these two different effects, and let's say we do more processing. So come over here to we'll do like eighth note triplet delay. So, all right. So now that that has processed everything, so if we wanted to undo that like a year later, the original file when doing offline processing is always going to be preserved. Unless you choose to go to audio and freeze edits. So, but there's generally not a good reason to do that. But at any time, all you'd have to do to, let's say, change a setting. So let's say if I wanted to come here and I wanted this to be a quarter note delay, I can now just do this. And the original file is reprocessed to accommodate that. But at any time, all you'd have to do is to delete all. You could just say, if we did like 6 or 7 processes, we could delete these in non-sequential order, but we could also just say delete all, and the original file will just be accessed. So at any time, 10 seconds later, 10 years later, you could just delete all from the offline processes. All right, wonderful to see Cubase X on. All right, we have Monos checking in from Thessaloniki. I'm sure I said that wrong. And wonderful to see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. And we have David Griffiths checking in from Wales. All right, so we see Peter with the Zoom question was in the mixer. So let me know if mine behaved differently than yours, Peter. All right, so we see Michael Pierce, who says, good evening to everyone. He's in the middle of a dramatic storm. I hope you're all safe and well, so we're all doing great. And just wanted to let everyone know I did get the Zoom license over the weekend, so we will be doing the Zoom meetup on this Friday, November 4th. So we'll start that around 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and that may be different depending on what country you're in. All right, we have Wilhelm Kampmann from Germany. Thanks for joining. Okay, all right, you see Peter will send more detailed questions. All right, my timeline jumped. All right, so from Cubase Access question, my friend is contemplating jumping over to Cubase, but he asked me if Cubase has a MIDI EDM stabs rhythm generator, or they're built-in MIDI loops with Absolute 4. So there's built-in MIDI loops, but if you wanted to do all sorts of different types of where you're generating different rhythms, there's a number of ways of doing that. So I'll just go to this project. And this is very popular with EDM music, doing different arpeggiators. So if you wanted to just jump to maybe so let's say I have a synth bass part here and I want to go to like MIDI inserts. So there's all sorts of different arpeggiators that we could use. So if I just wanted to play, so I'm just going to hold down a chord. So we could do stuff like this, or if we wanted to, change the step size. So I want it to be 16th notes, but I want the length to be 32nd notes, and I wanted to change the play order to go up or to go down or random. And we can set a key range here for if we wanted to do like 2 octaves. Or if you wanted to also come over here, there's like a step designer. So if I wanted to take a look at step designer, there's all sorts of great, so we'll just load a preset, and let's say, I'm sorry, that's Beat Designer. So if you want to do like drum programming, but the one I was thinking of was Step Designer. So now we could also just say, I'm going to take just this synth bass part and so now if I have just like one note written out, so I'm going to come here and just draw in a note. And now we could have that just kind of play back. So if you wanted to come here and you could have different MIDI controllers here for different. So all sorts of different little utilities for like MIDI plugins for generating MIDI parts for EDM. So you can tell your friend there's lots of stuff like that inside of Cubase. All right. So we see are some news infos about Apple Silicon support for Howling Sonic 3. So I know it's being worked on, but nothing that I could share at this point. But the team is working on it. So rest assured of that. I know it's probably like the one plugin that and Howling that are holding off a lot of Apple Silicon support from people just going fully Apple Silicon. So. All right, so we see from Michael Teams, just says, hi, Greg, mine doesn't open up with that window after create empty. We'll figure out what would be the equivalent would be. So if you're, if you don't see the after create empty, just make sure that you have, instead of use default location in the hub, that you prompt for project location. So now at this point, it's going to ask you for the folder where everything is going to be stored. So come over to your file, to new project, make sure that prompt for project location. Now, sometimes if that's checked, some people just come here and hit the enter button again, but you want to choose a new folder for each project, ideally. That way you can back up the project's much easier. And then once we're here, it'll create a brand new project. Just go to File and Save. And at that point, it will automatically save the project for you. And you could, as you're going, you could have your backups automatically save just like that. But again, just make sure in the new project that you have prompt for project location selected. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button, so that's how we can continue to do these live streams. So, all right, we see Captenergy music on. All right, so we see from Manuel, it says, hi, Greg, this is Andrade from Angola. I sent an email about questions how to set my Phantom G8 as a sequencer in Cubase and have access sounds from the Phantom, use as a MIDI controller for VST. So I did send you the link, I think, to that, but if you have external controllers, so let's say you have an external instrument, and realize that there's a lot of limitations with hardware instruments in terms of integration. So if we have an external instrument, let's say if we add an instrument track, and I just wanted this to be, we have our virtual instrument loaded, then now any MIDI device that's connected to the particular instrument. Any MIDI device that's connected to your computer can play these particular sounds. So when we come over, sorry, let me just. So at this point, we can play these particular sounds anywhere that we're at. So let's say, let's do. So, you can now just have the Phantom keyboard automatically play, and have access to those particular sounds. Let me see if my window got snuck up here. All right, now when you want to actually just go back to just start this again, sorry. So, when you have your external keyboard, what we want to do is, so, if we have an external instrument, so we'll add an instrument track. So let's say, okay, we'll come over here to retro log. So now as we play, we can just kind of come right over here and play that from any MIDI device that's connected to the system, such as your Phantom G8. Now, when you want to, now if you wanted to have the internal sequencer, so if it has an internal sequencer on the Phantom, you could synchronize those two. So if you go to Transport and go to your project synchronization setup, you can say, okay, I want to send MIDI clock out to the MIDI port where the Phantom is connected. It could be it's probably going to be a USB port, I would assume. So you want to send MIDI clock out and tell your Phantom to synchronize, and then you could add a MIDI track. And at this point, we'll say, we'll add a MIDI track, set this to MIDI channel 16 if you have multiple MIDI channels, and then record, and then that data will be recorded directly here. When adding just a MIDI track, if we add a MIDI track, we can now have the information, the MIDI data recorded from the input of the Phantom. We want to set the output here to where your Phantom is connected, and then you could record MIDI data. So as we do this and we play, what could happen is as we want to play, that MIDI information is recorded into MIDI data into Cubase as a sequencer. And then the audio is going to be sent out to the Phantom to generate the sound, unlike a VST instrument that generates the sound entirely in the software domain. So at this point, the sound is going out to the Phantom, and you have to take the analog outputs or a digital output of the Phantom and connect that to somehow that you can monitor, often into a mixer. Now, if you wanted to go to, if you have available inputs on your audio interface, go to your audio connections and go to external instruments. And what you want to do is add an external instrument and tell what audio inputs we need to connect the audio outputs from the Phantom into audio inputs of your audio interface, so that we could get the audio from the Phantom into Cubase. And at this point, when we go to add an instrument track, we could choose under external, like here I have it set for a Yamaha Montage, but you could set it for your Phantom. And now when you play, it can automatically take the audio out of the Phantom, and now you could apply through different plugins and processing. So it's not nearly as integrated, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast using external hardware. All right, so we just see a question. How do I set up a bus to add some reverb to my different orchestral instruments? All right, so let's say I'll just go to a quick orchestral project, or I'll just make one here quickly. All right, so I'll just make a Howling in Sonic SE, and let's say I'll do 5 instances of that. Just change one quick preference on my Mac here. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Okay. So now if I have all of these different instruments, I could select these instruments, and then all we would have to do is go to add, and we'll say effects channel to selected channel. So we can say, okay, I want this to be my reverence reverb. So at this point, now all of these tracks, when we go to them and we go to the sends on the audio, so we'll come here and we'll see our sends, our audio sends will now all be sent out to the reverence reverb. So if they're instrument tracks, select them all, right click, go to add track, and then you want to say effects channel to selected. And now we get each of these will automatically be sent, and we could adjust the amounts to the same reverb. And we'll see that added in send 1. See, John Costigan wants to suggest to find the loudest level. So a lot of times you do see that in programs like, you mentioned you used it in SoundForge, and it's often used in more audio editors like SoundForge, Wavelab, but I'll make sure to pass that along. All right, so we have Bruce Bruton just checking in from Simi Valley, California. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Patrick Emmanuel A. says Greg running Cubase 12 Pro and Win 10, Intel i7, 128 buffer size. It's consuming 8% CPU, 2300 megabytes of memory, 3.5 GPU. Very high on power usage. Is it normal? If not, need some suggestions on settings to protect PC. So a lot of times, like power schemes. So I think 8% CPU is probably not too bad. I mean, it could depend on, so you see, 24 megs of memory or 24 gigs of memory. But the power usage, so when we go here, often we'll go to the audio system and we'll see on the Windows platform where you can see use Steinberg power scheme. So often when different computers want to be more eco-friendly, how they do that is by, shutting down your CPUs, which is, so if it's, which is bad for your system performance. So, there are low power CPUs, such as Apple Silicon processors use low power, but a lot of PC, Intel, and AMD processors will utilize power. But realize that if you wanted to use less power, that it's going to have an adverse effect on your system performance, which is so, think if you want the best performance that you may have to utilize more power on, especially on Windows with, AMD and Intel chips. Okay, so we have Madge Deepers checking in from a wet and windy UK. Thanks for joining us today, Madge. We hope you're doing well. So we see Truth Hurts just mentions Cubase was my first DAW, the best. Then they stopped making it for Mac. I use Cubase on my iPad. It's a game changer. So Cubase has been available for Mac for 34 years continuously. So it's never not worked on Mac. So, but yeah, so it's been available for 34 years on Mac platform. So we see so we see a question from Bob. Just asked, I upgraded my Cubase LE to Cubase Pro. Can I give someone the Cubase LE program, or is it dead in the water? So if you bought a new version of Cubase Pro, then the license you could give to someone else. But if you upgrade it from LE to Cubase Pro at a discount because you were a Cubase LE user, then that license is kind of your license is migrated to a Cubase Pro license. So technically, I don't think so. So, but it depends on if you upgraded from Cubase LE to Pro at a discount, or you just bought Cubase Pro after utilizing and using Cubase LE. All right, so we see PZ136 just checking in, saying hello to everyone. So thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have a question. Can you explain how not to clip and still maintain a decent decibel level on the master fader? When I play back commercially mastered tracks, they automatically clip even when the fader is at 0 dB. All right, so so I'm not sure where you're playing back the commercially mastered tracks from. So if it's from a streaming service, realize that that could be converting it from a MP3 file to a WAV file, and there's going to be a conversion stage there that may automatically have effects. Or if you're ripping it directly from a CD, that would be if you go to import. If you have it on a commercial CD, realize that if you go to import audio CD, that would be a direct extraction from the file. But realize if you have a streaming service, if you kind of recorded it in from that may affect the levels. And once you take a compressed file, such as an MP3, and then turn that into a WAV file that could be played back and processed and edited into Cubase, that's going to change your gain. That could change your gain structure as well. So, and a lot of times, people get paid a lot of money on mastering sessions and have years of expertise to kind of get the loudest level. So, if you could, and this is Mo4Low, if you could let us know where you got the mastered file from, that would be helpful. All right, we see David M on. We have Danny B saying greets from Amsterdam. Thanks for joining us. All right, my chat field just jumped, so let me just find back where I was. All All right, so we have Corey Levine checking in from Nashville. So I miss going to Nashville, seeing all my friends there. So we have a question, sir, is there any default template for orchestral writing as Junkie XL? So not a default because, we could create a template, but you may not have, hundreds of thousands of dollars of orchestral libraries that Junkie XL has. So each template can really be very contingent on what actual sample libraries that you're using. So I think that there are, so if you go to the Discord, as Jazz Dude mentioned, that there are a number of different templates, but the templates can be very system specific as well. So just be aware of that. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to map a motorized fader in MIDI remote? So certainly, it doesn't matter if if it is motorized or not. But if you wanted to, all you'd have to do is, let's say, if we're like building a new MIDI remote, or we're just kind of, let's say, if we're just kind of working on creating it. I'll just show you how you can utilize it. So it doesn't matter if the fader is motorized or not. So I'll just go delete my choice sauce, and we'll show you how you can do this. So whether it's motorized fader or not, so we'll just kind of click right here. I'm gonna say. All right, so we'll just add a vendor, and I'll just say this is my choice sauce. Great controller. All right, and this is a 100, meaning I have 100 millimeter faders. I'm going to select my in and out port for this, and then we'll click on create MIDI control surface. So this has like 8 faders on it. These aren't motorized, but it'll literally be kind of the same thing. And at this point, I'm going to move fader 1, move fader 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And as we do this, it'll kind of automatically populate these, and we could go to the mapping assistant and assign different functions. So to these, if I wanted this to do quick controls for this, that we can now just map these particular faders for different functions. So whether it's motorized or not motorized, it will be treated the same way. All right, so we just see question from PZ136. Will Cubase support 2.1 in the control room? So generally, most of the formats when you're going to be using 2.1, most subwoofers when you're utilizing 2.1 is, what happens is you would send the stereo signal out to the LFE or the subwoofer, and then from the output of, like, you send a stereo out to the subwoofer, and then from the subwoofer to the satellite speakers, and then you could use the settings on the subwoofer. So currently there isn't a way to do 2.1, is really just kind of like, it's not as separate, because what happens if you do it in 2.1 is when you do your audio mix down, it's not going to include the information that's in the sub, because, if you're doing a stereo mix down for streaming services, they don't have 3 channels. But when you're doing more 5.1 and Dolby Atmos, they have dedicated surround speakers. So that's why you don't really see it in the control room. And most subwoofers, when you utilize it, realize that you're going to be dealing with a stereo source. So it's going to be a stereo monitoring path. And then at that point, You could do the crossover and whatever processing in the subwoofer, and that's probably the best way to do it because you're not actually going to be delivering 3 channels of information to the final delivery source. For the most part, it's going to be a stereo file. See Don Hubbs just saying, evening, getting grips with Cubase 5 to Cubase 10. Sub recently may have questions. So thanks for joining us and welcome to the live stream. All right, so we see from Raw Botic question, how to set up parameters on tempo track. So say if we have a tempo track, we'll so let's add it. We'll just add our tempo track. So, if we wanted to at this point, so, for the most part, we could just come over here and, we could see our tempo value. So if we select the event, we can say, okay, I want this to be exactly at 136 and I want this. It's not necessarily assigning values, but you could use like your mouse scroll wheel to change values accordingly. If we're in the tempo editor, which is like control or command plus the letter T, where we could do kind of more of a detailed editing. At this point, you could do tempo recording. So let's say, while it's playing, I could just come here and draw in, and I could just use my mouse scroll wheel if I wanted to do that. So I don't need to necessarily map MIDI data to that. We could just use the scroll wheel and increase and decrease tempo like that. So let me know if that's kind of what you want it to do. All right, so we see question. Hey, how can we make our bass slide legato, the bass in drill rap music? So a lot of times, we can use kind of monophonic modes and glides using the sampler track. So it could really depend on the instrument itself. Generally, kind of in MIDI, it's going to be set up for, working with like portamento, and if the instrument itself supports that. But let me just open up a quick project here, and we could show. All right, so say if I'm here. So let's say I have just a bass. I'm just going to put this into, you see glide mode here. So we could just, do fingered glide on and off. So what I could do now is I'm just going to hold down this note. And then when I hit, we could just have that sample do a glide. So if we just kind of turn, if we want to change the time. Or if let's say we start with a high note. But let's say I want that to be a little faster. I could just come here. So, and this is just by, having, let's say, a bass sample right in and just kind of come right over here and do. And you could just do your different glides kind of just like that. So, and you want this to be set to monophonic mode as well. And if we activate this icon here, so that will put it in monophonic mode, we could put it into legato mode so that as that when I hit the lower note, instead of like re-triggering the sample from the beginning. So if I watch this, just look at the notes I'm hitting here, it will continue to play the same sample from that position. So that's how you can do it easily using the sampler track for kind of rap bass glides. All right, so wonderful to see Razel from Denmark on. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see from a question from Chaser. Hello, Greg. Example, on an audio track, you can mute the automation on the volume using a group track. Is there a way to mute the volume on a group track? All right, so let me just go to a project here. I'll set up a quick group for some drums. Okay, so let's say I send these all to a group channel. Okay, so when we play, all my drums are going to this group channel. All right, so it says on an audio track, you can mute automation on the volume using a group track. Is there a way to mute the volume on a group track? So let's say if I just open up, let's say if I have automation on this group track, so automate. All right, so now that I have the automation on, so let's say if you wanted to just mute, so you open up the automation lanes here. All right, or just choose to not have it. You know, you could just turn on the, so now if I read the automation, you know, you just click right here on the read automation. And if I wanted to not read, I could just take read off, and we could do that on an individual parameter. So now our group will be dynamic, or if I wanted it to follow the automation, just simply, now we can see the automation, and we'll just turn off. So if we turn off read on just the volume automation. So let me just select. Yeah, so we just come right here. So we actually would just see kind of the automation directly here. So if we just mute or just turn off the read, so that should do the trick. Let me know if that is helpful for you, Chaser. All right. Okay, so I see just a question from Patrick Manuel A. It says, Greg, working on a project with 100 tracks. I moved 5 bars away by using Control Shift E, but used only 4 bars. Need to merge back the either section with all 100 tracks. Should be perfect on bar. How to do so? Okay. Okay, so let me... I'll just revert this. Okay, so let's say if I... Okay, so it says I moved 5 bars away by using Control Shift E. So let me just come over here and zoom in, and we'll imagine it's 100 tracks, but I will enable snap. All right, and I'll just do this globally. Okay, so say Control Shift E. Okay. All right, so it says I moved 5 bars away by using the Control or Command plus Shift plus E, but I used only 4 bars. Need to merge back the editor selection, maybe the editor selection with all 100 tracks should be perfect on bar. How to do so? All right, so let me just reread it again. Okay, so it seems like, okay, I moved 5 bars away by using the Control or Command plus Shift plus E, but I used only 4 bars. Need to merge back the editor section with 100 tracks should be perfect on bar. How to do so? So let's say if we took 5 bars away and I only needed 4 bars, I'm going to hold down like Control. I'm just going to turn my snap on, and I'll just say, okay, let's do one measure here so we could actually just kind of make sure our range selection here. I'll just set this to 1.0, 0.0. Okay, or let's say, we just want to get rid of this. So now if we just hit Control Shift X, now there's only, or Control plus Command plus Shift X, there's only 4 bars. So you could take that selected range and then hit Control or Command plus Shift plus X, and now you have 4 bars instead of 5. So let me know if that's what you want it to do, Patrick. Okay, so we see from Manuel, just says, again, Greg, spectral layers. How can I reduce the noise on a separated vocal track? So if you have like the full version, the full version of spectral layers will allow you to do kind of noise, like profiles. So I'll just do a new project here just to show this. All right, let me just... Okay, so let's say if we have... So, and again, this is in the Pro version. I think you might be able to do it in Elements, but not, I don't think it's included in Spectral Layers 1. So let's say we have noise. I'm going to just add the extension here. I'll just do it for the whole track. So now when we double click, we're in Spectral Layers. So if I wanted to just kind of come over here and just find like noise. So say I just wanted to see, and we'll listen to this and see if this is mostly hiss. All right, so once I've kind of defined what the noise is, we can come over to process and just say noise reduction. So we want to register the noise. And now let's go to our noise reduction. And if you want, you could actually kind of preview this in real time. I'll just apply it. So now as we play, that you could, so we gotten kind of rid of the noise. So at that point, you could just kind of take noise away and be able to do stuff like that. So that's how you do it in the full spectral layers. So I'll go ahead and just remove this extension. All right. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button so I could be gainfully employed. It says he needs another bass. It's hard to have just 19 basses, so I need to get up to 20. Sounds good. All right, see more discussion on 2.1 monitoring systems. All right. All right, my chat field jumped. Let me see if I could find. Okay, so I think I'm near where I was. All right, so we see, hello guys, question. Hello guys, I need help. I bought a product that comes with Cubase LE12 and I did everything the way they gave me on instructions. And in the end, when I open up the Cubase app, it brings me to activation manager, but I can't find my product or license. Help me please. So make sure that you have created a My Steinberg account to start with. So if you need to create a My Steinberg account first, and then when you go to the activation manager, make sure that you're logged into the same My Steinberg account. All right, so we see a question from Neil S. Says, hi, Greg. I'm sure it's been asked before, but could you show me how I can drag an audio sample from the loop and samples media area into my project and get the same BPM to match my project tempo? Thanks. All right, so say our project tempo is 108. Okay, so what I want to do now is we listen to our metronome. All right, let me just grab a loop here. So say, okay, so say I want this loop, and this loop is set to probably 110. Let me do something that's a little more. Okay, so now that I've done this and I have my loop in, So let's say we listen to it. So it's not quite matching. So I want to select the event and we'll see musical mode right here. And then once you enable musical mode, then it's going to automatically fit the tempo. We could also do this by going to your media menu. And if we go to not the media bay, but to the pool window, and then you open up the audio, at this point you could just see, you could activate musical mode directly right here. So we could just say, okay, this is going to be in musical mode or not. And once it's in musical mode, it will automatically fit the project tempo. So we take musical mode off here from the info line. So no real correlation between them, but turning musical mode on, then it will line up to the project tempo. All right, so we see Mr. O joining from Cali, Colombia. All right, we see that Mo Forlow has imported an iTunes MP3 after converting it to a WAV file. So, make sure, because when you're doing MP3 conversions like that, it could add, additional gain structures as well. And make sure that, the file, the mixer, the fader in Cubase is set to, 0 dB, that there's no change in gain there as well. All right. Wonderful to see Mandy Lane on the live stream. We've missed having you on. Glad you could join us again. All right. So we see question from Rob. Just says, hi, Greg from Tarpon Springs. When and how is the best way to check for out-of-phase audio in a project? What is the best way to prevent it from happening in the first place? Thanks for your help. Okay. So when let's say if I wanted to take, I may be able to show it on, let's see if I have this in my, yes, still project number 30. Oh. Okay, so let's say if I want to take like acoustic guitar parts here and I record it. All right, so let's say I had these recorded on. So generally what phase is going to be is like when we have, two microphones capturing the same source, kind of, but kind of slightly different times of capturing the waveform. So I'm going to go to project and let's go ahead and convert these tracks. So I think we could show it with this. Okay, so when we go to look at particular tracks, we could kind of see phase often, and I'll just make this larger to see. All right, so we look at these two waveforms. We can see that while, and imagine this is basically the vibrations in the air. So if one of these sources here was out of phase, so I'm just going to come here and invert the phase, we would see that while one waveform of the source is going upward, the other is going the opposite direction. So if I wanted to take this and listen to it, it would sound kind of very thin because some of the frequencies are just canceling each other out. But if I flip the phase, and let me just put that into a loop. So I'm going to just look at this. So you hear how it got very kind of mono. So these two files here, when they're out of phase. Now, if we wanted to look at this in a meter, we could just open up like our supervision. All right, and we'll look at phase. So we see our phase scope here. Let me just get rid of these other meters. All right, and so now so that's generally a pretty healthy phase, but I'm going to invert the phase. And we see how it goes very kind of vertical. So that's indicating that we have phase issues, that basically the sound is canceling out. So we often run into this like with overhead drum mics. So, if some people will actually measure with rope or string to make sure that the microphone is the same exact length between different between the two different sources. So if you have two overhead mics, they'll make sure that it's the same length, like based on the snare position. So if we wanted to look at our phase with this, again, we'll just kind of flip the phase. You can hear it and see it visually. So if you see it kind of going like diagonally, that would be kind of bad phase relationship. And we could also add some other phase. Like if we want to see like if there's particular frequencies that were out of phase, we could come over to kind of a multi-correlation. So if we watch this, now we could see right now we have a very healthy phase relationship. We see all these positive, but when I flip the phase on a particular channel or polarity, we can see that these frequencies in red are so after a while, you get to kind of hear these things and say, oh, okay, these two mics, often if you have a bottom mic and a top mic on a snare. And you could also look at it if we wanted to add additional phase meters. All right, so I'll say, okay, let's take this and look under phase. And we can see kind of like overall, like kind of a phase panorama. So we'll just make these all a little bigger. So if we see this kind of in the center on this meter, that would kind of lead you to think that maybe it was more out of phase. So let's add another phase meter here. So let's say we've got the balance already. So let's say. So in here we can kind of see so watch when we adjust, invert the phase or the polarity here. We can see how these all will go kind of very kind of vertical or very horizontal rather. And we could think of this as almost like taking the waveform, if we're to imagine kind of taking this waveform and rotating it 90 degrees and looking at it, we can think of that's what the phase is showing us. So let me know if that's helpful, Rob. All right. Okay. So we have a question from Don Hub. Says, I have a question, but it may be off topic. Does the sampler track have any way of stretching by note mode similar to Contact Time Machine mode? I'd love to ditch Contact. So, as we take samples, so I'm not sure what the Time Machine mode is. I have an idea, but I'll show you here. So let's say we go to our sampler track. See, we still have the project open. Maybe I closed it. So sorry about that. Let me just All right, so let's say if I have a blank sampler track and I drop a sample in, and let me go ahead and just normalize this. All right, so now when we play, so when I go to play, you know, our traditional sample, when I come here, it's going to play back. And if I play like, you know, 2 octaves lower, it's going to take 4 times the speed, so half the speed. And if I play down 2 octaves lower than that, then it's going to take 8 times of the original speed of this. So, and that's how kind of, you know, traditional samplers have worked. So if I played a chord, we would hear that all the notes would drop out at different times because. So, but if we wanted to put this into audio warp, what we could do now is just kind of play. It's this way, all the different samples will be the same length. So whatever sample I have, I could just kind of drag and drop that sample in and be able to kind of play harmonies if I wanted to. So, and even if we have, you know, just like, you know, one particular phrase, you know, so let's say if I wanted to take this and let's replace it. And if we put this into audio warp mode, again, we could just simply kind of come here and so let's say if I have just like a vocal part here, that now if I put on audio warp mode, I could just I am singing this phrase for great. I am singing this. I am singing this. So, you know, I'm playing the samples at different pitches. They're all going to play at one consistent speed, regardless of the pitch. And if I wanted to even come here, let's say, you know, if I wanted to put this into monophonic mode. I am singing this. And let's put it on retrigger. I could just say, I am singing this phrase for Greg so that he can get what he needs accomplished with this program. So, you know, that's all kind of one pitch. The sample I could just replay. So that he can get what he needs accomplished with this program. So you can just kind of do stuff like that. So let me know if that's kind of what you intend to do or want to do. And if not, if you can tell me what the time machine mode is and let me know what it actually does, that'd be great. All right, so we just see from Mr. O question, is there a macro or something where I can press Control C and the scroll bar goes to the end right side of the event, MIDI or audio, like in Reason? So when I press Control V, the scroll bar is at the event, at the end of the event already. So I think if we just, so let's say I wanted to go to the end of the event, and I'll just take off this mode here. So let's say, if I'm in the middle and I want it to go to the end, I think we just go to edit. And then you could say, you know, move to event starts at cursor. Oh. Let me just, I think there's a, maybe it's under transport, but I think if we wanted to go to, just see if I remember. I think there's a go to event end. I'm just looking at key commands. All right, let me look at cursor. All right, let's see, maybe a macro. Let me just. So I know the beginning we could always, if we have transport and we just go to use video files edit mode, anytime you select the event, it goes to the beginning. And let me just see if we. And I'm just having a brain cramp with this. Just look under transport one more time. Okay, so I think it's locate selection end. So let's say if I'm here. All right, so let me just turn off this transport function. So I think if we're here and we have this selected, they hit L. So you could, under transport, locate selection end, and locate selection start. So if you go to key commands, sorry for my brain cramp. So locate selection end and locate selection start. So that will move the cursor to the particular beginning or end. So I think the default is L of the selected event, and you could set up a key command to move to the end. Sorry about that taking so long. Okay, so we see a question from the Heartbreak Time Machine. Can we load multiple samples into the sampler track like a drum sample set, or is it only one sample? So the sampler track is designed for one sample, but if you wanted multiple samples into a drum track, all you'd have to do is, let's say if I'm here, let's go, we could do this within the included Groove Agent SE. So let's come over to Groove Agent SE, we'll hit add track. And at this point, if I just wanted to take drum samples, so let's say Groove Agent library, I could take a number of different samples and drop them on, and where we see 3 little squares, that will automatically just take your multiple samples and map them across different pads. So Groove Agent SE is kind of a great drum sampler, and we'll do that for you very easily. All right, so we see quick question. Once a stem has been exported, does it lose its sonic quality or degrade, assuming keeping all the same bits and samples? So yeah, I mean, there are ways that you could degrade the quality. Like if you're going from a 64-bit floating point, 192K to a 16-bit 44.1, you may lose a little bit in dithering, but basically it's going to sound the same. So. All right. So we see just a question from Jason Williams. Says, is there a way to batch pitch correct multiple takes lanes on one track or multiple tracks? So if you wanted to, do in Very Audio, it would be one particular event at a time within Very Audio. But if you had multiple events that you wanted to do pitch correction on, I could select multiple events and come over to, so if I wanted to do, let's say under audio, let's go to our direct offline processing. So if I wanted to do something like, okay, I want to do a plug-in, like pitch shift, we could do pitch correct and say, okay, I want these all to be, pitch corrected to D major, and I could select multiple events and have that automatically applied to multiple. But if you wanted to do more graphic editing, that would have, where you're doing it inside of Very Audio, at that point, it would need to kind of be done one event at a time. All right, wonderful to see Terry Dean on the live stream. Great to have you back. All right. All right, so we see Luca checking in from Munich, Germany. Thanks for being here. See, Michael Pierce is saying Revelation today that non-retriggering in the sampler track. So that's a good one. So. All right. So we just see a question on sampler track. Can it sense the note of the sample itself, or do you need to know the note to get it right before mapping like contact? So sometimes it can, if it sees like the note in the name, it could do that. But if you just look at it in, sometimes I've seen some files where like it will kind of detect the pitch and place it accordingly. So, but I would always check it manually if it's going to be critical. So if it's kind of like a vocal thing and you need it to be, exactly in key, make sure that you've done, tuning in your vocal, but you could just look at it inside of Very Audio and be able to do and get a sense of what the root key is. But and often, it's probably more accurate to do it that way. So if you're going to play back, depending on if you wanted to play back kind of with different chords and realize that, maybe you have a melody line that's, playing different notes. And if you play different chords, that those melodies may not work. So, but the best results, I would say, check it all the time just to make sure. All right, wonderful to see Uno Memento on. So, yeah, it's our victim of daylight saving time. So, but glad you made it. All right, so Madge Deepers is worried that she has missed the ice cream van. So I think that Michael Teams will be able to accommodate. All right, so Michael Teams has granted myself and my family 1 gallon of mocha chocolate ice cream. Thank you very much. Mocha is my coffee drink that I have one every morning as my self-indulgence. There we see Madge Deepers has received 1 gallon of Frangelico orange ice cream. So. All right, so we see Terry Dean just saying, what happened to the chat scroll? I keep missing text I typed to appear on the screen. So make sure that, I think there is a character limit with it, Terry, but maybe if you get a chance to ask in maybe shorter segments. But sometimes some people's questions will not show up in the text. So sorry about that. We're not sure why it happens. All right, wonderful to see the Monk Beats be able to join us. Yeah, so I think next Monday we'll be on kind of that American and EU times will be kind of in sync again. So with daylight savings time. All right, so we see just a question. In MIDI, I wish I could play drums and have each part be in a different track lane while playing live, like F sharp hi-hat to be in track 1, kick B note to be in second track, snare, E note to be in third track. So if you want it to do something like that, so I'll just do new project. All right, so I'm just going to add an instrument track. So we'll start with Groove Agent. So I'll just load up a quick kit. You may hear my son practicing his ukulele bass outside. Here, so let's say, okay, we got, let's say, some Simon Phillips drums. Okay, so I'm just going to add MIDI tracks here. Okay, so and when we add MIDI tracks right after a selected instrument track here, I'm just going to set these, it'll increment the MIDI channels. I'm going to just set these all to the same MIDI channel. And then if we wanted to do this live, all we'd have to do is say, okay, on this one, I only want C1. Okay, so I'm going to go to my input transformer and say, let's go to track. And then we're going to open up the panel, and we want to activate modules. Say we want to filter out type is equal to notes. So I'll just say value 1 is unequal to C1. Okay, and let's say on this one, I want to set up a MIDI input transformer so that anything is going to only be, it's going to filter out everything except D1. So let's again go to our input transformer. Let's get to track and let's open the panel. So again, filter, and we'll say MIDI notes unequal to D1. So now when we go to, now when I go to hit C1 on this track, it's only going to, I hit other MIDI notes, they're all filtered out unless it's D1. And when I come to this track, all notes are filtered out except for C1. So when I now, let's say I want to do this for, all right, so let's say hi-hat, and this will be on F sharp 1. So now, again, just come to track, open the panel, insert. So type is equal to value 1 is unequal to F sharp 1. So now if I just wanted to record on these, I could just come right over here. And I'm just going to arm these tracks for record. And now it's only going to, it's going to filter out all notes except for the particular drum. So just use the input transformer. You could set it to the track, go to the panel, and then filter out notes that are unequal to the particular notes that you have there. And if you do have like a whole drum track, as Jazz Dude mentioned, so let's say I want to load kit with patterns. Another way of doing this after the fact is, let's say if I have this and I've copied it to here, that we could just take this particular event, have it selected, go to MIDI to dissolve part, separate by pitches, and now this will take that particular pattern and automatically map it out so each pitch is on its own drum track. So 2 different ways. If you want to do it in real time, you could do that as well. All right, just reading through comments. My chat field just jumped. Okay. Okay, so we just see a question, MIDI remote, selecting mixer visibility config only works if the mix is the active window. Is it possible creating a macro and logical editor that one select mixer to the visibility configuration number? So yeah, we'll show you that. So let's come over here. All right, so let's say I want to see just a visibility configuration in this project for drums and one for guitars and bass. Okay. All right, so first I want to come over and I'm going to select all my drum tracks here. Okay, and let's go to our configurations and we'll say show only selected tracks. So we're going to add a configuration and we'll call this drums. Okay, so we go to our mixer, we can see that view. And so if I go to my large screen mixer, I could do that. Okay, so I'll just call this, I'll just do it from my mixer here. So say, and we could sync these. All right, so let's say I'm gonna, okay, so we'll come here, let's add a mixer configuration. So we'll call this drums mix. Okay, and so that'll be our configuration 1. So let me just come over. And now I just want bass and guitars. So I'm going to now come over here and let's add a configuration. So we'll call it bass and guitar. Okay, so I want to create a macro. So let's come over here. And I will now show all channels. Okay, so when I come here, we could come there and switch between our two different configurations. But let's say I wanted to trigger it from here. So what we're going to do is create macro. So let's go to our key commands and we'll see hide macros or show macros. We want to make sure that macros are here. And we're going to do new. So let's say, okay, so we'll call it mix visibility 1. So the first thing I want to do is to open up the mix console. So let's add that function. Oh, sorry. I'll remove that first. So I'm going to say we're going to open up the mix console and let's add. And then we want to do channel invisibility. All right, so now what I want to do is, let's say I go to my MIDI remote and I wanted this button here. So let's go to the mapping assistant and let's go to key commands And we'll go to macro. So we'll say mix visibility 1, apply the mapping. So now when I come here, I'm only going to see the drums. So if I had everything turned on, and we could do the same for, so let's say we're here and I go to my mixer, I see all of my mixer channels here, but I only want to see the drums, so I could just now hit that button, and that makes the mix window the active window, and switches it to that particular mix configuration for us. So if I want to do the same for mix console 2 or for visibility configuration 2, again, go to key commands. Let's make a new macro. All right, so again, well, I'm just going to hit F3 for the mixer, hit select, and let's add that parameter. And then we go to our channel and mix configurations, visibility. Let's go to 2, and let's add that. Okay, so now I want to map this button on my controller. And we could say, okay, and again, go to key commands, to macros. And apply that mapping. So now when I want to just look at my guitars, now if I would want to just look at my drums, I could just toggle quickly back and forth between the two of them. So create a macro, again, just to, and again, it's just open the mixer and then trigger that particular mixer configuration that you saved. So you can have that for drums, and if you work with templates, you could say, okay, I want to see all my strings. I want to see all my used strings, and be able to open it up quickly and have those different configurations stored. All right, so we see the Monk Beats is smash the like button. Use number 81. Thank you very much. All right, so we have XEasyX Primitive just saying hello. So thanks for being here. The Heartbeat, the Heartbreak Time Machines also indicates that the smash button's been, that the like button has been smashed by him as well. Let's see, PZ136 says you need at least 28 max, 31 basses. All right, so I have some catching up to do. So I've never sold any of my basses though, so people with large collections often can't say that. Still have my very first one. All right, so you see Patrick just asking, thanks Greg, helped. After rendering MIDI, how to reactivate the same MIDI portions because it appearing white, and I couldn't make changes. Let me see if I could scroll back in time to find what that's referencing. Sorry for my bad memory with this. Okay, maybe this is with the moved 5 bars away, but using, but only needed 4 bars, so like deleting the time. All right, so let me just remember what the, Okay, so you just see, thanks, Greg. I helped after rendering MIDI, how to reactivate the same MIDI portions because it's appearing white and I couldn't make changes. All right, so let me just draw in. Okay, so I guess this is maybe with a render in place. So let's see if we come here and all right, so generally by default, the events are just muted. So if you see them white like this, try clicking with the mute tool, and then you should be able to edit. So it's usually after rendering. Excuse me, I'll clear my throat. So usually after, if it's like a render in place and you see this turn white, that just indicates that it's muted. And now you could just kind of click on it with the mute tool and be able to, edit. But let's say even if it's muted, you could still, draw notes in. You can still edit it, but you don't hear it. But again, it's probably just muted. So when it appears white, just try to unmute like that. Let me know if I misunderstood. See, PZ136 is just on his jazz bass is 30 years old and he can't remember changing the strings. So I like fresh bass strings. So, but I guess I'm trying to keep. I have like a 2008 P bass, which I guess is 14 years old now, and it still has the original strings. And I don't play that much, but you can't have like almost 20. I think at the time I had like 15 basses and not a P bass. So. Nick is just, see, Jazz Dude doesn't change his strings, and Nick is just asking, you can change bass strings? So. All right. So we just see a question. When will there be Mac M1 native support for Halion 6 and Sonic? So it hasn't been announced, but I know it's being worked on. It may be a next generation. I'm not sure, but you might be able to get more information on, on some of the Steinberg forums. But currently there's nothing really to announce on it. As soon as it's available, we'll let you know. But rest assured that it's being worked on. It's a big project. See, Nick just mentioned, he says, I reckon bands I've been in have changed lineups more than I have changed bass strings. So you see just a question from the Heartbreak Time Machine who asked about phasing. So I think it was Rob from Tarpon Springs had asked about it. And he's just mentioning he just went to a whole workshop on phasing and it feels like he could give a TED talk on it. So. All right, so we see from THMS, does Cubase come with a bass amp sim? So yeah, and it comes with a really good one. So if you go to under, let's say we get an inserts, look under the distortion category, and then you'll see VST bass amp. So you can see very kind of familiar amplifier models. My favorite company there, but if you wanted maybe one that these are all fairly recognizable. Maybe an Eden, maybe a Gallion Kruger, maybe a Trace Elliott, so you could kind of get a sense, and you have mix and match of cabinets, full pedal board that you could have access to, different microphones and microphone positions, as well as you could have pre-effects. So you got built-in tuners, you got master sections, so output effects. So yeah, definitely kind of check out the VST bass amp. It's very good. All right, so we see from X Easy X Primitive, once the loop on the timeline, how can we split the drum individually for mixing purposes? Thanks. So, there isn't kind of like a fail-safe kind of extractor. Like, we could do stuff like, removing different like vocals from recordings, but sometimes, drums can be a little trickier because they're often kind of played at the same time. But if you wanted to have a little bit of control over loops, let me just open up a project here to show you. All right, so say if we have a drum loop here. Okay, so say we have kind of drum loop. So, and I want to have we'll start with an empty instance of Groove Agent SE. So what we could do now is drag this, let me just... we could do this in the sampler track. I'll show you in the sampler track or in Groove Agent SE. So now if I have kind of an empty instance, I could come directly here. I'm going to drag it to a pad so we can have the whole drum loop mapped out for us. At this point, if we wanted to, we'll see slice tab, and then we'll say create slices. And now each sound has automatically been sliced. And at this point, if I wanted to take that drum loop, and it's created a pattern here that now I could take this drum loop and drop it in. So let's say I want to take this snare here and make it louder. I could just say, okay, let's go to so say I want to take this snare, let's make that snare sample louder, and let's change the tuning. So let's tune this one up and make it really loud. So now as we play, so you could do stuff like that. Now also, if we have a sampler track, what you could do is very similar thing, drag a loop down and then go to slicing. So we'll activate this. And then, we could do our slices here, and we see this little MIDI icon. We could drag this to our sampler track, and same type of idea. So you could do kind of, break apart drum loops that way pretty easily. All right, so we see THMS is thinking about switching from Logic. He doesn't want to be too dependent on Apple. So yeah, Cubase is a great choice. You can use whatever computer you want, Mac or Windows. Okay, so we see from Northam Love. Hi, Greg. I know you've probably been asked this a million times, but how can I unblock my Waves plugin bundle version 13 They are VST2, but 64-bit. I can't reactivate, delete it, the prefs, blacklist files. So, make sure that, one that, I'm not sure if you're running on an M1 processor, but if it's running on an M1 processor on Mac OS, then the VST2 plugins aren't going to work on that. But you might have, you probably have VST3 versions as well, but, sometimes if it's not allowing you to see the VST, if you see it in the block list, you can try to reactivate. So if you do have a plugin here, that you could, I don't have any block listed plugins, but you could select it and choose to, reactivate a particular plugin. But sometimes, if it's going to be, I don't have any Waves licenses. I'm waiting about 15 years for them to send me my reactivation codes. But always VST3 is always going to be better than, but you should still be able to run VST2 64-bit. But if it is, if you let us know which operating system you're on, that can make a big difference as well. But, you should be able to have the VST3 versions available as well for those particular plugins. All right, reading through comments. All right, so we just see, hi Greg, how can I detect the tempo of an audiophile song without creating odd tempo automations? I just want to know the specific BPM of a song. Thank you. So, the, tempo detection will, do a very precise job of that. So let's say if I go to like this particular file, and we go to, so let's say if I listen to this, so if I do a tempo detection of this, so when we listen to it, we can see that this is pretty accurate. So you could kind of get a sense of when we look at the tempo that it's between like 142, 147. So let's say, we wanted to make that 144. So you could do that. Now, another way that you could use this is a tap tempo function. So if you want to get a sense and realize that this won't be as kind of hyper accurate, when we see these variations, it's because like the original song is doing tempo variation. So even a groove within one measure can trigger different tempo detections. But if we go to the function here, so let's say we go to, I think it's under project, and we go to beat calculator. At this point, I could just kind of play the song. So let's say I'm just playing, and I could click on tap tempo. So I could just hit my space bar. So we can say, okay, we're around 144 as we look at that. So, so if you want to get a rough sense of what's going on, you could just, again, go to the beat calculator under the tempo and then just kind of come right over here, click on tap tempo, and then just hit your space bar or MIDI, just any MIDI note coming in. So, and I think just a space bar, but you could also, record just kind of MIDI, but just come here and, play along with the file and just tap. And that will give you kind of a ballpark tempo figure. So give that a try. All right. So we just see from Northern Love says Cubase blocks so many of my main plugins. Had to get JBridge. I'll try to download a VST3 bundle. So I realized that JBridge is only going to work with 32-bit plugins, which will probably introduce system instability. So JBridge isn't really going to have any impact on VST3. So make sure that that the ones you have are not 32-bit plugins. Is something, a lot of times when you buy a plugin, it'll install, every version 32-bit VST2, 32-bit VST3, 32-bit 64-bit VST2, 64-bit VST3, AU, AAX, so all sorts of different plugin formats. So some of you may be getting messages from, plugin formats that are just, 20 years old at this point, and some of those that are going to be causing problems can, be blocked because it's going to cause system instabilities. So I just see from the Heartbreak Time Machine, did Greg miss my question on multiple samples in the sample track? So again, the sample track's going to have one sample. And if you need multiple samples for drums, consider using Groove Agent. It's a great drum sampler. All right, we see Michael Pierce wants to chase down an ice cream van that's playing Led Zeppelin. So I think it was Led Zeppelin. So playing the Immigrant song. All right, so we have a question from Greg Malik. Just says, aloha, I'm trying to apply the same vibrato to another singer after completed recording. Maybe there's a technique besides bringing the singer back in. And let's see if it just says continued. Let me see if it's... So there isn't, so just saw continued. All right. So, there isn't necessarily, so if we have vibrato, there isn't kind of a vibrato match function in Very Audio other than kind of, minimizing the vibrato. So, so let me just take a look. I'll open up a quick project here. So when we kind of do this, so there isn't like a, extract the vibrato and apply it to another part. I mean, you could do a lot of the editing of the vibrato to match. And if you have two different, parts, you could just kind of navigate back and forth between the two as a reference. But there isn't a copy vibrato, because if you copied the vibrato here, it may be a different pitch on the other one, on the other take, slightly different pitch, and that would throw off all of the vibrato editing. So it kind of has to be done manually for that. So, but maybe in the future, but I'll pass it along as a feature request nonetheless. Let me see if I just... All right, so just reading through comments here. So I thought I maybe missed one, but... All right, so we see from Northern Love just saying all VSTs from Air, Hybrid, Ascension, Synth Master Player, a whole bunch, constant issues with that, 64-bit plugins blocked. So, let us know what operating system that you're running as well. And if that is, if you're running Apple, if you're running an M1 processor and those aren't updated to VST3, I think some of the Air plugins haven't been updated yet. All right, so I see maybe I misunderstood something, but I see discussion of like duplicating events like right after each other. So see Captain Energy Music just saying, okay, so let's say if I take this vocal part and I wanted to duplicate it, I could just hit Control or Command plus D, and that will duplicate directly to the end. So let's say if I wanted to take just a region of it, and we could just hit Control D if you wanted to also overlap particular regions. So sorry if I misunderstood. See Michael Teams just bragging that he saw Zeppelin many times when he toured with Shoko. He used to own their stage monitor system, and we used it for a main PA. And he still has a Zepp tour jacket in a closet. So, okay, so we see from tutorials just saying, does Cubase support importing specific assets from a project into another? So let's say I'm in this project. All you have to do is go to File, to Import, and we'll say Tracks from Project. And I will choose a different project and say I want it to go here. And then we could choose, okay, I want all my drums and I want the events and parts or not, or just the channel settings. So we come over here. We can now take that project and now the imported tracks from a different project. So once again, file, import tracks from project. All right, wonderful to see Matt Elston on from London. All right, wonderful that Pablo Vasquez has made it from Galicia, España. Drummer extraordinaire. All right, so we have a question from Benny from Sweden. Question, can you show me the possibilities available in Very Audio in Cubase 12? All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick look. So when we want to do this, we'll go to Very Audio. So we'll come over, and now we could see, first of all, I'm going to create a chord track here based on the events. So one of the cool things is I'm going to just drag that MIDI over, and we've created a chord track, and we'll come over to our Very Audio here. Okay, so once we've done this, we could choose to, colorize based on different criteria. So if we want to choose the colors, we could automatically base it on scales. So we can see notes that are out of key, or we can say we want to use the chord track, and we can see notes that are in key, in scale, and out of key. So, we could see just visually what is happening. When we want to do actual tuning, and I'll just make this a little larger so we could see, you have two different tool modes of smart controls. So you could say show the default, which will give you fewer tools. And I always prefer to go to show all smart controls. So if we wanted to take the pitch of several notes, I could just go here and we go to the bottom center. This would allow us to quantize the pitch. If we wanted to go to the top center, we could minimize kind of the vibrato. So we could just come here and kind of make the vibrato minimized. Now, where we see a lot of vocals where the pitch can go flat at the end, like when the vocalist can lose diaphragm support, I could move this center diamond, and I could say, okay, now when I wanted to adjust the pitch, I go to my upper right-hand corner handle. I could adjust the pitch up or down based from that particular point and not affect other points. So if I move my diamond over here, you can say, let's say the singer kind of scooped in a little flat, I could raise that up, and it's only going to raise the pitch from this particular spot. Now, if we wanted to just transitions could be really critical. So let's say if we have a note, let's say we look at this note, and we wanted the transitions to be very natural. We see these little triangles in the upper corners. So we could now move those over, and as we adjust the pitch, we can keep the transition between notes, but we could adjust the vibrato and kind of tame that, but still have those natural transitions between notes. Sometimes while you're vocal tuning, you may say this consonant is too loud or too soft. If you go to the bottom right-hand corner, you could adjust the volume. Here we could adjust the formants of the, after making like a big change, you could adjust the formants. If we see segments, and let's say this is maybe two words that should be two different pitches, we could just go to the bottom. It'll turn into a scissors tool, and then we could segment the different notes. Or if we think that this should be one note, but maybe the pitch changed pretty dramatically, we could go to the right edge here, and we see it will automatically turn into a glue tool, and then we could glue the particular pitch. If we wanted to still move pitches, but maybe not have them snap exactly to the grid. We could come over here and hold the shift key, and you could kind of get in between. So if you want to get like kind of maybe like a blue note or something like that, or you want the vocalist to be out of tune or in tune with the out of tune guitar note, you could just simply come over here and hold down the shift key, and then you can move freely. At this point, if we wanted to see Scale Assistant, we have kind of within the Very Audio in version 12, we could open up the Scale Assistant. So if we wanted to just come over here and say, okay, I wanted to use either the editor scale, so we could say this is in G major. So what I could do at this point is we could say quantize pitches, and this way we could take kind of all the notes within the scale, and I could say, okay, let's quantize the pitches, and we could do quantization based on the scale. Something else that's really handy is you can say, I want to see a reference track of MIDI. So I can say, let's look at the piano part, and I can see the piano parts underneath, so I get a reference of what pitches are being used by the piano part here. So that's a quick overview of some of the great editing capabilities that you have within Very Audio. Let me know if that's helpful, Benny. So everyone's happy to see Pablo on. You see the Heartbreak Time Machine just says that he had to learn the hard way downloading VSTs from small developers. I love the range of sounds, but the price paid in performance wasn't worth it any longer. So, so we see what is this month's Steinberg special. So, there's currently a Nuendo promotion going on. So you get Nuendo for 50% off. So check that out. All right, let me just jump back. My screen, my chat field jumped. Okay, so Michael Teams just saying Revelation a Day, the input transformer. And Pablo wants his ice cream transformed. So, all right, so we see a question from Quarantine. It just says, is this some kind of review of Cubase? That's awesome. So what we're doing is just a live stream, and what we do is just a Q&A for users. So we usually go for about 4 hours, and we just sit here and just answer questions that people have so they could utilize their Steinberg solutions better. All right, so we see a question from Andy. He says migrating to Cubase 12 from 11. I know I can't do quick, easy import/convert for generic remotes to MIDI remote. Slow. Is there a way to resize the text of remote buttons? Avoid truncating. Thanks. So as you kind of are creating different MIDI remote function. So let's say if I just want to jump over to, a Nectar, let's see, I think I may have. So let's say my Choice OS controller. So, when you do this, I like to kind of blow it up so that as you do editing, as we kind of come over here, you could zoom in and out, kind of very easily with this. Let me just. So, like as you go to add, different controllers, we could see that these will kind of, as we look at it, we could see kind of the underlying grid lines here. So, and there is like as we're here, I think, just move it up, but I think that there is like a zoom functionality. It's escaping me right now. But but you could easily kind of zoom this way and kind of replicate the controller. Let me see if it's maybe just in the. But but they're I'm just blanking on maybe if I do just a new. I'm just having my brain cramp on, but there is a way to kind of zoom, and as you're editing in the different values, you'll see that, like as we go to, okay, so maybe like as we're here, we can see kind of the zoom in, zoom out, but let's see if we can. Okay. Yeah, so if you just kind of go, you could see kind of in the mapping assistant here, and then you're kind of able to zoom in pretty well, like when making stuff. But let's see if we're here. Oh, so yeah, zoom controls right here. Sorry. Duh. So if you want to get like really precise to make sure everything is lined up, you could just go to the zoom controls right there. Sorry for my brain cramp, not being able to remember where it was. All right, so we just see a question. Hi, how important is it to maintain unity gain across all faders in the box mix in Cubase? So it's not really, I don't think it's critical at all that every project in your, every channel in your project has, unity gain. So, some people, there's kind of older school workflows that people would try to, and I think of Paul Simon's Graceland. One of my friends was an engineer on that, and their whole concept was they had no idea where it was going to be mixed. So they did all of the tracking so that someone could just put all the faders at at the same level and have kind of the mix, just as a way of kind of saying, this is what we intended. So someone could just put all the faders at 0 dB and like, oh wow, that's what the intended mix was. And that was kind of a way that recording engineers in the past could kind of dictate what the levels were going to be if they're afraid someone else is going to screw up the mix. But it's not really critical at all. You look at people's projects, and faders are kind of all over the place and just kind of mix to what makes the music sound better. So David M just said, "Whoa, dissolve parts using Groove Agent pattern. That's awesome. So simple as well." Yeah, that goes back to, I think, Atari days. So I think it was in Cubase version 2 in Atari when I first started with Cubase many years ago. Okay, so you see a question from Patrick. Don't know why it's really hard mixing in Cubase. Do you have any workflow tricks? Because every time I need to check chorus, verse, intro, outro, I go to program window, play, and then move to mix window. So let's say if we're in, I'll just open up kind of maybe a bigger project just so you can see. All right, so if it's like just navigating between the two windows, a lot of times, so let's say we have this as a project. Okay, so let's say we have kind of a large project with lots of tracks. So, but realize that you could just come here and you could have the transport, just directly here as part of the mix console. So you could just make sure that the transport buttons are there. So if it's like you have a hard time kind of just navigating back and forth, and say, okay, I just want to go to the next marker. So if you have your marker set for verse and chorus, so say, okay, I want to go to the first verse, so these will just kind of navigate to your different markers. So you can do that as well. So you don't have to always kind of come back here, play, and then open up the mix window. You also have, the mixer in the lower zone. So you could do a lot of quick mixing here. So let's say we go to this zone and you want to see all the different tracks and do quick mix, and then just, if you need to open up the channel view, you could do that as well. Or if you're here and say, okay, I just want to go to, instead of Tom 3, I wanted to go to, this particular track, I could just feed it. Or if you want to go to different tracks. So let me know if it's like, if you're having just, issues kind of going back and forth between the two windows. So you could mix in the project window or can drive the transport from the larger mix console window as well. So let me know if that's helpful, Patrick. All right, so Oscar Lamas asks, how can I color multiple tracks at the same time? So all you have to do is select your tracks. So say I selected all these tracks and I just select the first track, hold down the shift key, select the last track of the group that I want to edit. You'll see the color tool, and then you could just select the colors here, and all the tracks in their track colors will just change accordingly. So once again, select the track, select the color tool, and then select the color. All right, so we see from the Monk Beats, thanks, Greg, that macro trick for the visibility configuration works flawlessly. So that's great. And we see Pablo has smashed the like button as well. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on the live stream. Glad you can make it from Royal Wooten Bassett. All right, so we see from Kane88, whenever I record something, it is out of sync. I could understand if it was late due to latency, but it's always 44 milliseconds too early, which makes no sense to me. Any idea how to solve this problem? All All right, so I'm not sure if it's recording audio or MIDI, but if it's so, one thing to check is if you come here, make sure that try toggling the constrained delay compensation in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. So you could try to toggle that on and off. If it's still 44 milliseconds, if it's consistently off, and I'm not sure if it's just for MIDI or for audio, but if you go to the studio setup, so go to studio setup, and at this point you could choose the audio system. Try to make sure that adjust for record latency is automatically selected there. And then you could also just choose the record shift over, but make sure that is checked as well. But if you could let us know some of that information, if it's MIDI or if it's audio, that would be helpful. All right, Michael, Teams just needs one more guitar. So there's always Christmas. So. All right, so Cubase X asks, Greg, I know very little about bass. Could you explain the differences between the different kinds of basses, P bass versus jazz bass, etc.? All right, so basically the P bass was, I think, the first electric bass that Fender made, and it was probably the first commercially successful electric bass, and it was a very, why it's called precision is because compared to an upright bass that people would often play out of tune, because there was no fret lines, that it was precise with the intonation, so hence the word precision. So it was a single kind of a humbucker pickup, so it's kind of two pickups. One is kind of over the E and A strings, and the other is over the D and G strings. You have a volume and a tone control, so very, very simple. The jazz bass, what separates the jazz bass from that is it has two, so when you turn on the P bass, it's one pickup. You can't adjust the levels between. So it's kind of all on, all off, and a tone, which will kind of take the high end frequencies and kind of, adjust the high end frequencies down. So when you have tone all the way up, it's kind of a full frequency. When you adjust the tone down, it rolls off the high end. The jazz bass is different pickup configuration, and often the neck towards the nut is a little thinner. And they have two single coil pickups, and their pickup positions have changed from the 60s to the 70s. Some people prefer the 60s pickup configurations, the spacing. Some will prefer the 70s, but you have a volume control for each of the pickups and a tone control. So a lot of people using a jazz bass will use a jazz bass more because it could be a brighter voiced instrument, and then you have the ability, most people would use just the back pickup, kind of like with guitars. Les Pauls are often people, like, why do I have a front pickup? I just use the back pickup for straight rock sounds. That's used the 90% of the time by people who play Les Pauls. And with the jazz bass, it's going to be pretty similar. So most people, the jazz bass just play kind of with the back pickup closer to the bridge and use that as the tone. So a big proponent of that sound, you can think of Jaco Pastorius, who's kind of well known for that. So those are kind of the differences between the two different models of bass, the primary ones. And, there was Hofner basses, which, are primarily popular because Paul McCartney played them on early Beatles and still tours with his Hofners. I got to play it once. And then you had kind of a whole series of, very advanced exotic woods with active electronics, and probably the first proponent of that was maybe alembic would come to mind. And then you had people, doing a lot of exotic woods. I also really like Warwick basses. I think they're really exceptional instruments. So, but that's a quick rundown and some of the different basses. So, a lot of people will say, "Oh, just bring a P bass to a session because the engineer doesn't really have to worry about it." And everyone has heard a P bass so much in their life that it sounds good, just because it's been on millions of records, and it's kind of there's nothing to get screwed up. A jazz bass, if you have the pickups, it's slightly different volumes can introduce a buzz, kind of like a hum frequency, especially if you have different lights on. So a lot of people may choose, think Jocko or Marcus Miller as being kind of typical jazz bass sounds. All right, so we just see a question from Patrick. Greg, how to fastly draw in MIDI notes inside the key editor and how to invert MIDI notes. I know we could do it with chords, but can we invert scales for variations? So let's take a look. So let me just go to a different project. Okay, so I'll activate this project. All right, so I'm just going to create kind of like a container for the MIDI part. So say I just want to draw in stuff. So, if you wanted to, let's just come over here, say, okay, we have 2 bars and I just wanted to draw stuff in. So if I just have this set to my quarter note value, I could just say, okay, let's just draw in. So as I drew note in, it drew a quarter note in because that's what my quantize is set to. So I could just say, okay, let's now come over here and let me just enable snap. So now if I turn snap on, it'll only allow me to draw in. All right, so let's say I just kind of drew notes in. So I have a series of notes now. I want to come over here. Let's select all of the notes, and there's going to be different functions. So we can say, okay, if I want to do logical editors, but let's look at under functions. If I wanted to at this point, do stuff like, okay, I want to reverse the notes. I wanted to mirror the notes. We can do all sorts of stuff very quickly like this. So I just wanted to mirror the notes, reverse them. If I wanted to, come over and say, okay, let's take each of these notes. And if I hold down, I could split. If I wanted to get rid of one, we could just double click on a particular note while it's drawing in. If I wanted to just hold down my up and down arrows, we could do that. We could also go to scale corrections to say, okay, I want this all to be in D major, and let's quantize the pitches. So we could, just come right over here and quantize to particular keys. If I only wanted to draw in particular notes, we could say, show only pitches. So if these are the only notes that I want to be able to draw in on, we could do that as well. Or we could say show only pitches that are matching the key. So I can't draw a note that's out of the key that's been defined. If I wanted to take, particular notes in split, I could hold down my Alt or Option key, and then we could just click on a note to split. So I'll just take off my snap. So let's say, okay, we'll come right here, and then we could split the particular note. If I wanted to hold down the Alt or Option key, and let's say do this, like split it a number of different ways. So on this particular note, I can now just hold down the Alt or Option key, and then we could split that particular note. And if I wanted to quickly just say, okay, let's just randomly come over here, and then you could get into like the logical editor where you could, randomize based on, pitches, randomize velocities. So if you wanted to just look at the velocities at the bottom, we can come over here and be able to adjust those. I could select the different notes and adjust velocities up or down or tilt. So we say, okay, I want this to do a crescendo. I want these all to be compressed or expanded more. So all sorts of stuff that you could do. So if you only want to draw in particular keys, you could do that. Or if you want it to be free of, to use accidentals, you could do that as well. So let me know if that helps, Patrick. All right, so we have a question. How do you set up two MIDI keyboards to have different sounds? Okay, so let's say if I wanted this keyboard, so if I have like, let's say my synth bass and a Rhodes. Okay, so let's say I'm here. So I have two different sounds. So if I wanted one keyboard to play, this Rhodes patch, and another keyboard to play this, but not both at the same time, all you have to do is go to where you see our MIDI input port. You can see all MIDI inputs, and we could say, okay, I want this coming from my UR24C, that keyboard that's connected to this, and I want this to come from for the input, I want this to come from my Panorama P4. So now if I, had another keyboard, I just have one MIDI controller on this computer. I could have different keyboards play different sounds because each sound could have a unique, MIDI port that we could direct. So instead of using the default all MIDI inputs. All right, and we see so I see the Jazz Dude mentioned, if you need to split it by MIDI channels, you could also do that via the MIDI input transformer. All right, so we see a question. Is there a way to zoom in or out of a video, not the F8 window, but the actual video? So if we have a video track, let me just import a quick video file. All right, so, when we have this on our timeline, so it's, if you wanted to just kind of zoom in on the thumbnail, so as we kind of zoom in, we could go down to the frame accuracy here. So, if you wanted to see kind of, so when we do this, we're looking at, frame by frame on the video. So, but it's not going to zoom in within the video, but if you wanted to see that on a timeline for matching specific elements, say, okay, there's a scene change here where we see the beautiful concert hall in Hamburg, and what exact frame does that happen in? We could just say, okay, looks like we see the transition start right here. So right at that frame, we could just say that's where we need to do a transition. So that's how you could zoom in on a video thumbnail. So let me know if that's helpful. All right. So we see from Aaron asks, does anyone know if Cubase 12 Pro has a preference to automatically store an imported video file in the project folder? I remember several people asking for it as a feature request with 11 Pro or still use backup. So let's do a new project. So let's do November. We'll do October 31st, 2022. We'll just do that here. All right, and let's go ahead and import the video file. And let's look in the folder, see if, sorry about that. All right, let me just check my project folder again here. Just make sure, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna save the project here, sorry. All right, let me just check again. Okay, sorry. All right, so let's see if we have the yeah, so so it looks like, let me just check a quick preference. Looks like the video isn't imported, but let me just see if yeah, so it looks like when you back up the project, so let's say if we come here to backup project, and we'll do a new folder, that now when we come over here, create this, we'll include the video. So let's see if we do that. But you could always just kind of start with the particular video from the project folder. So let's say, yeah, so at that point, it's once you do the backup project, then it's going to be stored. But you could just open the project, open a video from within the project folder. All right, so we have a question from Scott Davies. Hi, Greg. Do you know a way to export from Cubase a list of installed plugins would be handy when upgrading the PC? So I think if we go to your VST plugin manager, and then if you click here, you can go to plugin report, and this will generate the text document for you. So now let's get to your desktop. Plugin report text. And here you could kind of see all the plugin versions, the SDK, so that are installed on your system. So once again, come over to your studio menu to VST plugin manager, and then click on plugin report, and you could save it as a text file. All right, so we see a question from Bob Demers. Is there a way in Cubase to show the words of a song along with the music? So you could do it in the score editor, obviously, but one of the things that I did is, you could set up like marker tracks to do this. So I set up a marker track with lyrics, like, if you're doing like a lot of, complex vocal work, I just kind of make markers with the lyrics on it. So when I come here, let's go to visibility. I can say, okay, let's go to so I have a marker track that's just lyrics. So when I open this up, we'll go to the inspector. I could just say, okay, here is all the lyrics. So once we come here, this is the particular line that we're in. So I just drop a marker, and then you could just kind of copy the text in from a notepad. But as we play, so let's say, okay, I want it to start here, and we play, and we can see the markers kind of automatically update. So we see this line indicating what line we're in. I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until now, that was okay. Guess all along, I was so naive. And then if the singer's like, oh, I just want to go to something about it just sounds wrong. Or go back to our musical history, that line I want to punch in there. So you could set up markers to do that and be able to just, quickly navigate in the project as well for quick punch in and punch out. And, when it's, because the singer may not say, oh, go to 3 minutes and 32 seconds. I want this line, or go to this, the third chorus. If they just want to go to a particular line, you can navigate to it quickly directly from, you could go directly from there, to the time in the project. All right. So we see from Patrick says, Greg, how to show all automation and hide all automation with one click. So again, if I wanted to come to, so I'm not sure if it's, so with automation, like, for the mixer, for audio, you could just say, show used and hide all. So you have different functions. So you could say, okay, so I'll just kind of draw in some quick automation here and different tracks, so you could see it in action. So say we're here, so I can say, okay, I want to hide all my automation. I want to show used. So you could do that. So it's two different functions, but you could just, have, keyboard shortcuts for that. And then, all right, so questions, it says like show all pitch bend, velocity, aftertouch, and all used parameters, and show and hide with one click. So, if you're doing it for MIDI CC data, you could come over here. So let's say, okay, I want to go to a MIDI track, and let's say I have, aftertouch. So let's say I have aftertouch there, and I have, I'll draw in some pitch bend. So at this point, you could say, show, you could have different presets. So if you just wanted to see, particular presets, I'll just make this larger so it's a little easier to see. So, with MIDI CCs, I could just say, okay, I wanted to see, velocity, modulation, expression, and volume. Or we could say, I just want to see show velocity only. So we could have different controller lanes that are going to be set up. So you could just say, organize presets, and, you could have those automatically just show up right there. So you could set up your own custom key commands. And if you want to add presets where you have different elements installed, or you don't want to see any controllers, you could just come right over here and not see the controller lane at all. And those are all keyboard mappable. Or, okay, just want to see velocity, you could just say show velocity only. So reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. My chat field just jumped. Let me see if I can get back. All right, so we see Soren Petrick saying hello. See, Benny is now, I understand, the very audio. So see Gerald Ely saying the very audio smart tools. That was his aha moment of the day. See Heartbreak Time Machine just bought Color Lo-Fi. So yeah, I don't have a copy of that. So all right, so we just see a question. Hello, can you show us how to fix the activation problems on multi-devices? So a lot of times when I found that people are having problems with like Activation Manager, is like they may install it, but they don't necessarily sign in with their My Steinberg account. So let's say if we come over to Steinberg Activation Manager, that, make sure that you're actually signed in to your My Steinberg account here. So I would, definitely check that. So a lot of people may install it and then don't sign in to their account. So that could make a big difference. So make sure everything is kind of installed and you're logged into your My Steinberg account in the Steinberg Activation Manager. And I just see kind of further questions as I use just a PC and a laptop or for some time. I can't activate Cubase. So, make sure, like if you go to, your My Steinberg account, and let's say we log in here. All right, and then you could say, show the Steinberg licensed products. So you could just kind of see the different, what ones have been kind of, so check your Steinberg licensing based products there in your My Steinberg account. And you could reach out to Steinberg support if it seems like, and check to see which computers have it on. And they, if needed, they could remotely deactivate a computer. Okay, so we have a question. Can you please explain the arpeggiator in Cubase, especially Apache SX with sequence mode, and import MIDI to ARP, and how to record the MIDI from ARP to new instruments? Okay, so let's say I have a particular project here. Okay, let me just find... Okay, so let's say I have this little... with many beautiful electric piano links. Let me just solo this. So okay, so if I want that into like an arpeggio, so I'm just going to take this. Okay, so I'm going to take this particular track, and I'll just turn it up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to go to the MIDI inserts, and I'm going to go to the Apache SX. So I have this little phrase. I'll just put on a different track. So when I do this, I'm going to click on the sequence tab, and then we're just going to drop the MIDI sequence. So now when I erase this, I'm going to play just, I'm going to hold down a chord. And there's a function here where we could actually just record. So as I would play notes in, let's say I'm just recording, I'm just going to play chords. So whatever chord I kind of hit, that those particular notes, and I have automatic quantize on, so let me just reset the quantize here. That all those particular arpeggios have just been recorded. So drag and drop the particular phrase, so open up sequence, and then as you play chords, that will automatically record it. And if you wanted the arpeggio to be recorded, just click on the record here. If you didn't hit that button and you just have like the chords being held out, you could at that point go to MIDI and choose freeze MIDI modifiers, and that will then take the results of the particular MIDI plugin and then render the results on the project window. All right. So we see from D Cameron says, "Hi, I'm using 10.5 under key commands. I can assign a key to reset the meters, but it's impossible to reset the record red clip lights." All right. So let's see. Let me just look at key commands here quickly. Sorry about that. All right. All right, so let's say it's meter reset. So let me just assign that to one of the buttons on my MIDI remote. All right, so say come here, I'll just turn my control room volume down. All right. Okay, so you want to reset the record red clip lights. All right, let's see if I send this to group. So do you mean maybe, so I just see kind of the reset meters overall, but I'm not sure if it's the record input that you, so we can see that like as we play here, that we could, so we could have this, let me just check my meter settings. If we have this set to hold forever. So yeah, so I don't know a way other than the reset meters. Sorry about that. All right, so we see from Cubase X, dang transport bar in a mix window. Revelation today always floated it with F2, but this is neat as well. So yeah. All right, great to see Sable Winters on. She was like number 78. All right. All right, so we just see question. In Cubase 12, the performance meter is piking without doing nothing. How we can fix that? So check to make sure that you're actually, when you're, there's different, different utilities. So, the first thing to always do is just to go to your studio setup. Let me just. So if you go to studio setup, check to see where your buffer size is. So let's say if we go to your audio interface, adjust your buffer size and see if that is doing it. You could also make sure that ASIO guard is on, that activate multiprocessing is on, and also that you have your particular, you'll see a Steinberg power scheme that you want to use that as well. If that still doesn't make any difference, it could be something like a display driver or a Wi-Fi, driver that causes interrupts that could be creating a lot of different performance spikes. And if you're on Windows, you can check out a utility called Latency Mon. I think it's by Resplendence. And that could, if you have kind of a hardware interrupt that's kind of affecting your audio performance, that could point it out and kind of get you into the right direction. All right, so we see Patrick just saying, Greg, to be frank, I had a lot of confusions about Cubase, had solutions to everything. It's wonderful. I had no idea what to do, but it's just so simple. Just need to turn on the transport buttons. Boom. I think that's with in the mixer. So glad you're finding nice, easy solutions. All right, so we see question, how to use pencil on audio to reduce like sibilances in vocal parts. Thanks. So a lot of times when you're doing sample editing, you have to be at, let's say if we're in the sample editor, you have to kind of be zoomed in to, like near the sample level for the pencil tool to work. So if you see that you have like, maybe like when we come in here and we try to, you could kind of draw in the waveform like that. But probably if we're at this stage, you'll get a message saying, please zoom into a resolution. So you have to be kind of zoomed in to a particular resolution, and then you could just simply kind of draw them out. Sometimes drawing them out may not be as effective as actually just using like the built-in de-esser. So every channel, if you go to the channel strip and under tools, we'll have kind of a de-esser. So you could just apply that. Now, there's also a more feature-rich or kind of a more extended version. So if you go to the de-esser here in Dynamics, and you'll have presets for, you could sidechain in, but you could have, different presets for male or female voices as well. And if you find that you have to do this all the time, like you have a book on tape and it's what you get to do after a while is you could just come here and just select where the sibilance is and go to audio. And if you just do like processes or just apply plugins, so say, okay, let's come here to de-esser, and if you need to do it like 1,000 times, you could just come right over here and just say, okay, run this section, these are the settings, process, okay, do this, okay, automatically apply that DS to that particular section. So you could do that very quickly with that. All right, I know we have a bunch of questions. Time is flown today. Thanks for all the great questions. So I know we have some topics that were mailed in. Let's get to some of those. Okay, so you just see a question. Transferred projects from Cubase 8.5 32-bit to Cubase 12. The vocal tracks are in lane mode. Unfortunately, after the conversion, the lower lane bar covers the active pieces, which are located in the upper line. You have to manually click on them with the composition tool, I guess the comp tool, which takes a lot of time. Is there a command to do this in one step? Thank you very much for your answer. So, I haven't noticed, and I'll see, this project that, that I use for tempo for comping is actually from Cubase 6. So I'll just open, let's see if this is still the same location. Let me just go to comping. So this is an actual Cubase 6 project. So, and when I've done open up the comping, it, there hasn't been any changes, or, there's not really like a conversion necessarily. But so when I come here and go to comp, let's say the bass part, everything is, all of my projects have always kind of come back without, another part being overlaid. That these edits will be preserved from, Cubase 6 when a new comping paradigm was introduced on, pretty sure I was running 32-bit and Cubase 6 at the time. But I didn't notice any problems. But if you have a particular project that you want to share with me, and I'll go ahead and email you. This is from Peter in Budapest. All right, so a question. Hi, Greg. Cubase Pro 12.04 UR 816C and an i9, latest Win 10 Pro, and monitors. After adding some wall treatments in my studio, I want to recalibrate SonarWorks. For some reason, I'm getting sound directly from the mic to my speakers, causing feedback. SonarWorks says set interface to 44.1 and disable direct monitoring. I never use direct monitoring, and the box is not checked in the studio setup. I've tried all the obvious, like reinstalling Steinberg USB driver and SonarWorks. I even get uninstalled the basic effects suite out of desperation. After some more investigation, I find that I'm getting sound from the inputs of my UR816 to my speakers all the time, not just with SonarWorks. It's just never loud enough to feedback. And if I try to measure the room, I disabled control room, which is using outputs 1 and 2 for mains and 3 and 4 for the Q mix. I enabled stereo outs and outputs 1 and 2 removed in inputs except mono 1. Nothing has helped. How do I get my inputs to not go directly to my outputs? So probably, check. I don't have SonarWorks, and I've never really had a chance to use a UR816C, unfortunately. But out of curiosity, if you just take the monitor off, would that prevent the feedback from being captured that way? So, see if you have the monitor off. Also, if you go into like the DSP mix effects, let me see, I may not have it on. Let's see if there is one for like an AXR. I may not. So like if you go to your DSP mix effects, like the little software, try to set this to initial data and see if that helps as well. But it doesn't seem like it should automatically be kind of refeeding. So maybe there was a patch that was done in like the matrix. So check that out. Okay, so we have a question. Says, when I use the play tool in the track window, it plays the music from the point where the play tool is. When I use the play tool in the edit window, it shifts. It plays it mostly later and sometimes correct. Why? Is it a bug? So let me go ahead and just open up a project here and we'll test it. Okay, so let's say we'll come right here and I'm going to just kind of zoom in.
Enjoy urban life.
All right, so let's say I want to use the play tool.
Enjoy urban life.
All right, so I'm just going to grab the play tool here.
Enjoy urban to enjoy urban life. To enjoy to enjoy urban life. To enjoy
All right, and let's say if I and let me not have this in hit point mode. Sorry about that.
enjoy urban life. To enjoy urban life. To enjoy urban.
So I mean, it seems like it's playing.
To enjoy urban life. To enjoy urban spots. To enjoy urban. To enjoy
Right,
urban.
so come here.
Life. Beautiful spots to enjoy urban life. Beautiful spots to enjoy urban life. Beautiful spots to enjoy urban life. Urban life. Urban life. Urban life. Urban life.
So it seems like it's playing back in the same spots for me. But let me know, I know you had sent a video, but it seems like I didn't have any kind of discrepancies with that. All right, so I just got this in the mail. Last week after working on my latest smash hit, I saved it, shut down the machine correctly, and went to bed. Not next day, turned on everything in usual manner, loaded the song, and the sound is dreadful. It's distorted, multiple dropouts, unusable. The audio monitor info shows that it's maxing out almost immediately, even during the count-in. It's not a complex song, just drum, bass, guide vocals. So I know I'm not overloading the processor. I've tried all the usual fixes, changing the buffer size, reloading drivers, turning ASIO guard on and off, even using a different audio interface, but nothing helps. The track levels on the meters are going up and down in time with audio dropping out. It seems to be a Cubase problem to me, but I can't sort it. Has anyone any ideas? So check to see, sometimes I've seen situations like this when like a USB bus is being overloaded. So check to see if you added anything on a USB bus. And if you have like a built-in audio interface, either like a motherboard audio interface or your built-in audio if you're on Mac, and if you play it back, see if you get the same results. And if that would be, so if you're playing it back through something that's not USB based, if you have like a USB kind of power saving scheme mode that got turned on, that could often create situations like you describe. And if you're on the Windows platform, check out to make sure that if you have the actual latency, you could check out the Resplendence latency mon utility, and that could show you what could be causing some CPU spikes. Okay, another question. I really wish that the score editor, one, could create chord symbols totally manually. Cubase does not let many more advanced chords like C minor, major, 7th, flat, 5th, or 6/9 chords to be seen in the printout, as it does not recognize those. All right, so let's go ahead and add a chord track. So a C minor, major, seventh with a flat fifth. That could be a C diminished seventh chord. So, but let's add a chord track and see if we get it to create. So when I come here, let's say if I want this to be C diminished seventh. So here we could actually see that's going to just be indicated as a C minor seventh flat fifth, just as you wanted. So, and then if we wanted this to be spelled out as, diminished seventh, we could probably, if we click in here, so we could say, okay, let's make it diminished. And now if we wanted to switch to enharmonic, so now we come over here, let's add the seventh. So, you could do, so you could have it as a C minor seventh flat fifth just by default. And then you could change that to a C diminished seventh if you wanted to. And it says, and also 6/9 chords can be seen in a printout, so it does not recognize those. So when I come here, let's put like a C6 chord. So if I just say, okay, let's make a C6th chord. Or we wanted to add a C6 ninth. Let's make it a C chord, C ninth chord, and we can make it a C6 ninth. So we'll say C6 and 9. So if I wanted to take a look at this, let's go. We'll add quick instrument track. And we'll come back here and we'll see if these show up in the score editor. So as soon as we do this, we'll go to our scores and say show chord track, and then we can see our C6/9, and I'll switch this to page view. So we can see our C minor seventh with a flat fifth, just like you wanted. We have a C6, a C9, and a C6/9 chord. So it seems like it does them all. All right, so let me jump back to our live questions. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. We got a couple more minutes. Sorry about that. Let me just... And once again, we will be doing our Zoom meetup on Friday. All right. All right, just caught up to where I was. All right, so just a quick question from Robbie Bowling. Not important, but when is the next update for 12? So I think it's in testing as we speak, so don't know exactly when it'll be out, but they're always going through, and I know it's in testing. All right, so we see from question, is there a way to select multiple tracks and change output to a group track instead of one at a time? All right, so let's say I have a group track. All right, I'll call this test. And Now I want to add a number of audio tracks. All right, so we look at our audio tracks and all the routing is set to stereo out. So I'll come here, select these, hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and let's change it to the group. So now they're all going to our test group. So just select all the tracks you want, hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, then switch the output accordingly. All right, we see Pablo had 4-cheese pizza for dinner. Sounds good. All right, so we have Rude Screen checking in from Luz, UK. Thanks for joining us. Gerald Ely says dropping a MIDI phrase into our Apache SX is a cool trick. All right, so you just see Greg, while dragging audio into a chord track, I see options like including bass part and some more options lined up, but it works only for some audio. I need that to pop up every time I drag audio to a chord track. So if you need that to always do it, so you could try, let me just go to a quick project here, something that will load quickly. All right, so when we're here, instead of dragging it, if you want it to pop up, try going to select the event, go to project, and I think if we go to chord track, we could say create chord events. That may trigger it. So, and it could also be depending on what. And let's see if I do this. But you could try to trigger it from, if you go to chord track and then, and try to create chord events. But it might be dependent upon the material as well. Like if it's seeing a lot of, inversion or inverted chords as well. All right, so I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for great questions. If you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and look forward to seeing a bunch of new people, hopefully on the live stream and the Zoom meetup on Friday. Thank you very much. Goodbye.